Good morning, Linda. And we do have breaking news, as Linda mentioned. This is coming out of New York City. Terry and Kim Pegula are expected to comment after being approved as the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. The vote by NFL owners happening around 8:30 this morning. And the vote and the approval, no surprise, as it was expected to be unanimous after unanimous approval by the NFL Finance Committee last month. And right now we'll go out to Jeff Russo. He's been live there all morning in New York City along with Keith Radford. Good morning.
All right, thanks, Laura. Keith Radford here along with Jeff Russo. We are in the Conrad Hotel waiting for the Pegulas to arrive. We understand they're supposed to come down and speak with the media maybe in the next 5 or 10 minutes. To recap again, as Laura told you, it was very quick this morning. The NFL owners voted no problem at all to accept the Pegulas as the new owner of the Buffalo Bills. The deal is going to close within the next 24 to 48 hours. Then they will technically be the new owners. All happened awfully quick today.
It did. It was very interesting to see. It was our understanding that they would, the Pegulas would have to wait outside the room when the meeting started. They would be presented a presentation of their resources, of their background. Then the Pegulas would come in, introduce themselves, answer some questions from their, future fellow owners, and then leave the room again for that vote to happen. We didn't see it happen that way today. We saw the Pegulas come up, stand outside the room. The owners began their meetings. The Pegulas were brought in very quickly, and we heard the rousing round of applause, and then the unanimous approval of the other NFL owners here today. That was very much expected, Keith, as you know, and then putting a stamp on it today as we move forward. Now we're going to hear really from them in the next couple of minutes. Terry and Kim Pegula, really their first statement since their approval this morning. Expected only to be just that, I think, just a quick statement before they close and finish off and finalize that $1.4 billion deal. And I expect much more. More answers to questions, all those types of things back in Buffalo, perhaps on Friday once that gets done.
The Pegulas arrived about 8 o'clock. Meeting kicked off at 8:30. Within about 10 or 15 minutes, it was all done as far as approving the vote. Now, I have seen Mr. Pegula and his wife, obviously here, and the PR people from the Sabres and from the Bills, kind of shepherding them around the hotel today. I have not seen Mrs. Wilson here, but Ralph Wilson's niece, who also has been a top executive of the football club for many years, she is here, has been running around a lot. Wouldn't go on camera, but both sides are here getting the deal done.
Yeah, historic day here today, the transition of ownership from the Wilson Trust, really the first time since Ralph Wilson came up with the team 50 years ago. This obviously changes ownership from Mr. Wilson, who passed away back in March, to the Wilson Trust, and Mary Wilson, who was the controlling owner at that time, now changing hands to Terry and Kim Pegula. So, a celebration, I think, in many ways today, Keith. You heard the applause upstairs, but also, and we've mentioned this many times, sort of a look back at the past, remembering all that Mr. Wilson meant to the NFL, and the Pegulas have made it very clear in terms of their statements to the media that they intend to carry on the legacy of Mr. Wilson. Obviously, their commitment to Western New York and keeping the team in Buffalo for years to come. So, a lot of going on in there. A lot of going on today.
Again, the purchase price said to be, and it's pretty clear. A lot of top sources very close to the deal have said it is $1.4 billion. The Wilson Trust will get that money, but it was announced the other day that a lot of that money is going to be put into this new Wilson Foundation, and it will be distributed to worthy charities and all kinds of groups in the Buffalo, Western New York area, and also in Mr. Wilson's hometown in Detroit, Michigan. Mr. Littman was here today. He has been Ralph Wilson's chief financial money guy for many years, and he spoke today.
Yeah, he did. He came out, and you very rarely hear from Jeff Littman as the CFO of the Buffalo Bills. You mentioned right-hand man, really, with Mr. Wilson from Detroit, or in Detroit. Came out today to sort of address the sale, really for the first time, and had this to say earlier this morning here at the Conrad Hotel.
I just wanted to make a little follow-on comment. You saw the statement that we released with respect to the Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation. And I wanted to add to that the trustees of the foundation have been working in a linear mode, and we've been going step by step through the process. The first mission was to identify successor owners for the Buffalo Bills franchise, which we have done here today with Kim and Terry Pegula. So check that box. The second step in that process, which of course happened today, was to secure ownership approval of their entry into the league, and we've checked that box. Now, the third step is to proceed on to closing, and we think that will be done in a very quick and easy way. They have been absolutely wonderful to work with, and everything has been first class through the process. So we think this will go swiftly, and we will check that box and move on our way. Once all of that is complete, our focus for the interim time after that is going to be to do whatever we can do and whatever they'd like us to do to help ensure a very smooth transition for all of our people back at One Bills Drive and for all of our fans in Western New York. Once that's done, we will be turning our attention. We've, of course, done some pre-planning work, but we will be turning our attention to the future and the mission of the Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation, and we won't have anything further to say until we've done that and gotten on to that work. But we look forward to someday giving you a full report on what our intentions are and what our plans are going forward.
You heard Mr. Littman mention first class, and that seems to really echo the thoughts of all of the NFL owners that we have spoken to here over the last 2 days. Why the Pegulas? Not only do they have the money, that's only part of it. First class, low profile, no controversy, have sports experience already in owning the Buffalo Sabres. Perfect owner for an NFL team.
Yeah, and praised really throughout this process for the way that they handled it, and we've talked about this on several occasions, the way they stayed out of the limelight, stayed out of the media, and like other candidates, when you look back at the Trumps and the Bon Jovis in this process, really handled it well, did their due diligence, their research. When you look back at the bidding that they went through, and then obviously getting into that definitive agreement back on September 9th. And you mentioned their commitment to Western New York, their commitment to Buffalo, the development they've been doing in downtown, I think all playing a role into this, and their resources to really take this team into the future, whether that's a new stadium, which is going to be a big topic, one of the big first questions that they will likely address, or just taking the team as a whole and sort of moving it forward under their guidance under that Pegula Sports and Entertainment, now alongside with the Buffalo Sabres. And I think that'll be a very interesting point too, how these two teams, in maybe some ways, will be joined as Buffalo sports teams now under the ownership of Terry and Kim Pegula. And we've talked about this before as well, and one of the big questions too, I think, will be the role of Kim Pegula. You and I had learned that she really played a big role in the sales process in terms of really spearheading a lot of that.
But when he bought the hockey club, she came in, did a lot of work at the ice rink downtown, redid all of the dressing rooms, and it appears that she's very involved, as much or even more so maybe than her husband.
Yeah, and I think the expectation is that she'll continue to be involved here with the Buffalo Bills moving forward, so we're anxious to hear from her. Again, in just a little bit here, their first statements of their approval here this morning.
Now, Mr. Pegula did speak to the media 3 weeks ago here in New York City. Jeff, you were there when the Pegulas bid was approved by the Finance Committee. That was the first step, and of course the final step today, and I suppose there's one more step, actually writing out the check and paying the money. But he, again, very low-key, has not talked much at all. We're expecting him here in this room within the next few minutes, and we understand it's only going to be a prepared statement, and that they will not take any questions yet. So maybe he will open up a little bit more once they actually technically own the club.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you look back to the the Finance Committee meetings, whether it was 3 weeks ago, back over at NFL headquarters, and you heard the statement that he said at that time that he did not feel like an NFL owner until this approval process was finished, until the deal was able to be closed on for $1.4 billion. I think now that some of that is behind them, I think we'll hear maybe a little bit more today. But again, I think they really, like you said, low-key, really have been playing this close to the vest, want to get this done, and officially, formally, it won't be done until they close on that deal. Really expected to be, if not later today, tomorrow, at least by Friday, setting up what's going to be a big weekend, I think, a big coming out party if all goes as expected for the Pegulas. Bills, Patriots, Sunday. It should be a wild scene, I would think, down in Orchard Park.
The team owners, of course, will be meeting here all day long. They got the Bills situation out of the way early this morning. That's done, but they also have a very big job ahead of them. The big issue that they're dealing with at the meeting, this annual meeting this year, is the conduct rules and regulations in light of some recent problems with some NFL players, domestic violence and abuse, and they really have not just a real serious problem, a PR problem, a problem no matter how you look at it, they really have to deal with and fix this.
Yeah, it's going to be a big problem, and it's going to be something that Roger Goodell, I think, will primarily focus his thoughts on after today's meeting. Obviously, we're going to try to get our way in there to get some thoughts on Terry and Kim Pegula, also on Ralph Wilson, but the domestic violence, you mentioned the abuse type of issues, that'll be a main agenda on today, and that was coming up after the approval of the Pegulas this morning, and that's another interesting part of this. After their approval this morning, they were allowed to remain in the meeting, remain allowed to discuss league business, discuss, sort of soak it all in for the first time as NFL owners. So they are taking part in the league meetings today, are hearing what could be changes to the conduct policy for the NFL right now in terms of domestic violence, and moving forward that'll be spoken with by Roger Goodell. That's anticipated for later on today.
Again, the owners of all 30-plus teams here, or if not the owner, then their representatives. Again, some of the people we saw yesterday and today, Mr. Rooney from Pittsburgh and Mrs. Ford from Detroit, and of course all the people involved with the Buffalo Bills and Jerry Jones and the Jacksonville Jaguars owner, who's a fairly new owner also. We spoke with a lot of them yesterday and last night as they arrived here, and just got their thoughts, initial thoughts on this new owner of the Buffalo Bills, the Pegula family. Here's what some of them had to say.
Among the many things that impressed me was Terry's and Kim's commitment to Buffalo, and I think they're going to be just perfect. I mean, it's a team that's very important to the city, and they'll do a great job.
I think there'll be a lot of support for him. Yeah, I think there shouldn't be any issues. So we're looking forward to it, and I think he'll be a great. He's got some big shoes to step into following Ralph Wilson, but from what I hear, and actually I had the chance to meet Kim. She and a number of people from the Sabres came out to Lambeau probably 2 years ago. And I think they've done a fine job and done a lot for the city of Buffalo, and I think it's going to be very positive.
Now, I asked the executive vice president of the league yesterday if there would be any kind of a memorial or tribute or whatever in the meetings today for Mr. Wilson, and he was kind of vague on that. I'm sure something's happening, but he wouldn't say exactly what.
Yeah, he said there would be really a lot of, remembrance, I guess, in some ways, of Mr. Wilson, not only from obviously NFL owners, but lots of members of the NFL staff that had dealt with him for 50-plus years of ownership within the league. Really on the minds of many, I think, here today, the transition of ownership from the Wilsons to the Pegulas, and a lot of respect, they said, inside the room coming today, this morning, as they sort of move forward now with a new era in Terry and Kim Pegula. And one of the first things I think they're going to have to tackle, and I think it's been really talked about not only by the league on several occasions, Commissioner Roger Goodell, but also some of the owners that we've spoken with over the last several weeks. Bob McNair comes to mind from the Houston Texans, is the fact that the Buffalo Bills likely at some point are going to need a new stadium. Some of the owners that we spoke with yesterday saying that is priority for the Pegulas.
And the commissioner himself has said that.
Yeah, he has, in terms of the long-term future of the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they've done a lot of the renovations to Ralph Wilson Stadium. It looks pretty good when you look at it this year in terms of the updates here and there. But I think that'll be the focus and the discussion moving forward: where, when, how much, who will fund it. But I think that's going to be one of the big topics, and really one of the questions we need to get answered from the Pegula family once we're able to, ask questions, will be their thoughts on the stadium, the process that lies ahead. Lee's still there with Ralph Wilson Stadium for several years to come, so they got some time to move there. But moving forward to take this team to the next level, you would think they need a new facility.
Mr. Wilson's foundation, the recipient of a lot of money, actually, that is going to be spread around western New York and around the metro Detroit area. Mr. Wilson had a number of businesses. His father had a paving company, construction company in Detroit. Detroit was his home for his whole life, although he did spend, obviously, quite a bit of time in Buffalo because of the football club. But we understand that when it comes to investments, Ralph Wilson paid $25,000 for that initial franchise almost 55 years ago, and that $25,000 is now turned into $1.4 billion. A pretty good investment, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say so too, and a record sale for an NFL franchise, and part of the reason I think as well that you get unanimous support from NFL owners is the ability to pay that type of price tag for an NFL team. Not only boost the value you would think of other NFL franchises around the way, and then something that was sort of embraced with the Pegulas not only having the resources to buy the team, but also the resources, once again, to take this franchise really into the next era, really to the next level. And a lot of this has been really interesting when you talk about the transition, and we've hit it on a couple times here. But the transition from the Wilson era to the Pegula era, you look back and really a day to remember, I think, especially for the Wilson family on Sunday. Bills at Detroit. Hometown of Ralph Wilson. Mary Wilson on hand on the sidelines, really thanking a lot of the coaches and the staff for all of that they've been through together over for the years.
And her counterpart, Mrs. Ford,
right.
We lost her husband last December.
Exactly, and then a come-from-behind win for the Buffalo Bills and a last-second field goal, and Mrs. Wilson getting the game ball after the game. I think really just an interesting and perhaps fitting way to wrap things up for the Wilson era, heading into what now will be a celebration. Really historic week in terms of the Buffalo Bills, landmark week moving forward now with the Pegulas.
I wonder what the Detroit fans thought when they hoisted Buffalo's new coach, the former head coach of the Lions, and carried him off the field after that last-minute win.
I was standing on the field when that happened. Jim Schwartz, obviously the former Lions head coach, now defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, brought him right up on the shoulder. The defense had a lot to do with that win, and that's going to be interesting to see too. Is what the Pegulas now feel about their football team, and you talk about 3-2 right now, coming off a big win, a quarterback change, Kyle Orton, Doug Marrone making the bold move to make the switch. Their thoughts on not only the coaching staff, the franchise, the future holds in terms of front office, and the moves like that. When they took over the Sabres back in the day, conservative, maybe sort of hesitant to really shake things up right away. I don't know if you could expect a ton of changes right away with the team being in the position that it is in terms of coaching and what have you, with it being at 3-2. But it'll be interesting to hear their thoughts of where the franchise stands, not only in the AFC East, but the league, and moving forward as well.
There's something else that hasn't been mentioned, or at least I haven't heard anything about it. The current people who run the Buffalo Bills, new ownership comes in. Could there be possible changes in management?
Yeah, I think so. At some point, I think a lot of that has to still be ironed out, or maybe some of it has been, obviously talked about moving forward. There's going to be, I would think, a change. Jeff Littman, obviously the CFO under Mr. Wilson for a long time. We talked about the VP of Strategic Planning, and Mary Owen, the niece of Ralph Wilson, and her role with the organization really for years and years dating back. She will now leave to take over the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. In terms of any other, obviously when there's a change in ownership expectations, there will be some changes. So we'll have to wait and see and get their thoughts of where things stand.
From Russ and Brandon on down.
Right, exactly. And Russ has done a good job in terms of, you talk about the marketing of the team, the ability to sell this team, not only obviously in Buffalo, but also in the Rochester area through training camp, and the ability to sell tickets despite the lack of success on the field. So he was here today. He was representing the Pegulas here today. Obviously a big part of the sales process, and I think we'll continue to be with the transition, and we'll see what lies ahead. But he has done a pretty good job of selling this team.
I saw him yesterday out on the corner getting a hot dog. I was getting a hot dog actually, and we spoke for a minute. But he seemed a little nervous to me. But I guess it's not every day that a National Football League club changes hands, and he's the guy who just in Mr. Wilson's last days, Mr. Wilson turned over the entire running and operation of this football team to him.
Yeah, he did, and he took that with really a lot of emotion involved in that transfer. Mr. Wilson called him a father figure. Excuse me, Wes Brandon called Mr. Wilson a father figure in terms of what he meant to him in his career and his commitment to him over the last several years. And so I think it's only fitting that he obviously took care and sort of watched over the sales process, got into candidates, lined up the people that they did in terms of candidates, and now moving forward with the Pegulas, taking it into the next ownership era. And that ownership meeting is still going on, Keith, right now. The early morning portion, we were expected to hear from the Pegulas by now. We were told, around 10:15, 10:20. We're now approaching the 10:30 portion of the hour. But, a historic day, and really the first statement from the Pegulas since the approval this morning, so we're waiting for it.
There were several gentlemen in the lobby here at the hotel this morning who looked strikingly like Terry Pegula, and the media were running around saying, he's here, he's here. Well, he wasn't here. It turned out not to be him after all.
Yeah, and they arrived, that's looking back and sort of recapping what happened this morning. They arrived here shortly after 8 o'clock this morning here at the Conrad Hotel in Manhattan. Terry and Kim Pegula walked through, escorted obviously to a side room down there before going upstairs and escorted to another side room. They were not allowed to enter the ownership meeting right when it began at 8:30, but it was very quick before they were allowed back in, just within a couple of minutes. And right after that, as we mentioned, a ton of applause applause coming from the room. You could hear on 1 or 2 or 3 occasions where they were presented, and obviously unanimously approved in terms of their ownership stake. And that's where we stand now. They have been in the ownership meeting since about 8:35. They have not emerged as of yet in terms of coming out and saying anything, and that's what we're waiting for here back here at the podium. This is also where NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell will be speaking later on today to wrap up this meeting.
Very busy always in New York, but especially busy this week with this meeting going on. A lot of media here from all over the country and all the networks here based in New York City, and also to make matters even more crowded and a little crazier. The president was here yesterday in New York City as well. Got a lot of streets closed off around this hotel. We're in Lower Manhattan, just off the river, and it's just a very busy, crowded place with so many things going on. And this is one of the big events happening here in New York this week.
Yeah, it is, and it was interesting to see sort of how the ownership meetings take place. The committee meetings yesterday, all the the folks that you may have not had a chance to talk to along the way coming in for the committee meetings yesterday, and then really the pomp and circumstance involved in the ownership meetings starting this morning. Behind closed doors, high security type of thing, where you can only be a representative of a team or be an owner of a team to be in those meetings. So really interesting to see it all go down. Obviously, big day for Buffalo, and interesting to see the Pegulas taking part of it with it for the first time.
And it's a big meeting. I mean, there are 31 clubs. I think you're the sports expert.
Yeah, I mean,
31 clubs. So each has an owner, and then they have a staff, and they bring their financial people and aides and secretaries, and there are a lot of people here at this meeting. It is a big event.
Yeah, it is, and it continues on right now. Continues as we speak right now, moving forward and waiting for the Pegulas to come down and address the meeting.
It's funny how one businessman, one family, can make such a difference and such an impact on one community. Terry Pegula comes in, buys the Buffalo Sabres, then buys the Buffalo Bills. Then he's building this almost $200 million complex downtown that is going to bring all kinds of minor hockey league teams from all over the U.S. and Canada into Buffalo. It's going to be a huge economic boost. A big hotel, reminiscent a little bit of the Regas family. If people can think back a little bit, the former owner of the Buffalo Sabres, the former owner of Adelphia Cable, they were going to be the savior of Buffalo for a while. Build a big office building downtown, they own the hockey team, and then of course that all fell apart. They got into some trouble, and sad really to think that Mr. Regas and one of his sons still in prison.
Yeah, and you look at what the Pegulas have been able to do in terms of their dedication, really commitment to Western New York and the development that they've been doing downtown. The Harbor Center really going up quickly as you look down there in downtown Buffalo. The ability to attract really national events, international events, at the time being a first-class facility, and it's really that commitment to Western New York, commitment to that type of development that really I think brought them into, I don't know, like many of the owners here really supporting that and seeing them as a very positive fit, not only for downtown Buffalo, for Western New York, but also in the NFL, that type of commitment to moving things forward.
We spoke also with one of the sports writers from the Toronto Sun yesterday just to ask, well, what was the reaction from the people up in Toronto who thought that maybe they may be getting the Buffalo Bills if the John Bon Jovi group had won the bid, had two big Canadian partners, but he told me that, really there's not that much disappointment there. They're really waiting and hoping to get an expansion NFL team in Toronto, so we'll see what happens.
You thought, and it's just interesting, we talked about this as well, when you look back in terms of when we first learned of really the Pegulas' interest of this franchise, a little bit after the passing of Ralph Wilson Jr., you had heard that they were going to be very aggressive in their pursuit, that they were going to be determined to win the bid of this franchise, and obviously here we are today. This is a day months in the making, a historic day, a landmark day for the Buffalo Bills, and it's, again, they handled the process extremely well with what they took, in terms of the approach that they took, and now all leading up to this point, and approval this morning, I think, was really part of the owners really sort of embracing them as the next generation of NFL owners.
And people talk about Terry Pegula and what a normal, regular, down-to-earth guy he is, despite being worth some $5 billion. He drives himself, doesn't like to fly a lot, doesn't really live an extravagant life, as we're told. Many similarities to Ralph Wilson. I'll always remember being out at Charlie the Butcher's by the airport, and Worley and Cayuga one day, and I was having something to eat, and in comes Ralph Wilson walking, didn't have a car, and he got a little bag with a beef on weck to go, and waved to some people, and then walked back. He had a condo for a while in the village of Williamsville there, and he just walked home with his sandwich, and we would come to town, they'd rent him. He always wanted a Ford Taurus, just a regular four-door sedan, didn't want any fancy mode of transportation. So he was a regular guy too, even though he certainly was a very wealthy individual.
Yeah, I think so too. When you look back to the celebration of what he was really embraced when he was put into the Hall of Fame. The Bills family, the big Super Bowl era, coming all together to really celebrate him, along with Bruce Smith when he was put in. And I asked him on that day what he was most proud of in terms of being an NFL owner, and he said, embracing the fans at times and really just enjoying the sport. Really a pioneer, considered a pioneer for the NFL, the conscience of the NFL, dedicated to the small market, dedicated to obviously the Western New York. And we made this statement too. Really a large reason why the Bills will remain in Western New York for years to come was the non-relocation agreement and the new lease, and then obviously Terry and Kim Pegula are ready to pick that up and carry on that legacy as we move forward.
Mr. Wilson's name, of course, now up in the Wall of Fame in gold, the only name up there to have that honor. And thinking back a few years, there was some criticism when they changed the name of the stadium from Rich Stadium to Ralph Wilson Stadium. Some people said, "Well, Mr. Wilson, you can't complain about the small market team not making enough money when you could have sold the rights to that stadium and made a few million."
Yeah, there's no question about it, and obviously that was a valid point at that time in terms of he could have, but he kept the name, his name on the stadium. He did things the way that he wanted to in terms of the franchise. That not had a lot of success over the last several years. Obviously, when you talk about the playoff drought, the inability to really have a winning season or break through into the postseason, and we'll see what new ownership will bring, what that will change. Now, I think in some ways the Buffalo Bills, when you take a look at them in terms of a roster, and the way they're set up in terms of a talent base, really are taking strong steps forward in terms of being competitive, for the playoffs for the first time in a long time, and obviously a lot will have to do with the New England Patriots, who we'll see come to town this summer.
Am I doing okay interviewing you this morning?
I think you're exactly. I think you're doing great. It's been fun.
Just to recap for you once again, we're live here at the Conrad Hotel in Lower Manhattan. We're waiting for Terry Pegula to come in and speak with the media after his bid was approved by the NFL owners this morning, just after 8:30, to become the new owner of the Buffalo Bills. $1.4 billion. The deal is supposed to close in the next 24 to 48 hours, and then officially the Pegulas will own the Bills and the Sabres. Don't forget. Certainly there'll be a big force in Western New York.
Getting word now.
Yes. Again, we're expecting them shortly. I understand that maybe the meeting, which is going on actually upstairs from where we are, is taking a mid-morning break, and we think this is the time when they're going to bring Terry and Kim Pegula down here. Now, he has spoken, but I'm trying to think of, I've never heard her speak.
She did, after they took over ownership of the Buffalo Sabres, and then many times since she's had some things to say about how things have gone. She's not spoken in terms of on camera during this process in public, so maybe we'll hear some statements from her for the first time. But this will be the first statement from Terry and Kim Pegula since they took over, since they were approved. And now they're entering the room, the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. Terry and Kim Pegula unanimously approved today about to speak here in Manhattan.
Good morning. Just as a reminder, Terry's going to make a few brief comments this morning, and we're not going to entertain any questions this morning. We'll do that back in Buffalo at some point. Okay, Terry?
How's everybody doing? I'm doing pretty well. Kim and I are honored that the NFL owners have approved us as the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. And we'd like to thank the owners for their support. As we said, we're not going to take any questions today, but this is a significant step, and it's owning the team, but we still don't own it yet. There's a small matter of having to pay some money, and wires have to be sent from banks and paperwork has to be signed and whatnot, but we'll get that done. We're going to head back to Buffalo tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll be at our Sabres home opener tomorrow evening, and we're guessing that Friday is probably we'll be able to speak to you all as the owners of the Bills. Okay? Thank you.
Is it a realization of a dream, sir?
Yes. Yes, it is.
My whole life.
You asked me 10 years ago if I was going to own the Sabres and the Bills, I would have called you a liar. So.
Terry, when did you decide? When did you really decide to pursue this?
I didn't hear that.
When did you really decide to pursue this purchase of the team?
It goes back further than you may think. I obviously, when I was asked when I bought the Sabres, are you interested in the Bills, you expect me to say yes. I can't, you know. But it goes back further than you may imagine.
You think you got a good deal?
I got a hell of a deal.
Thanks, guys.
I own the team.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you back in Buffalo.
All right. Let's get up here. We had to get out of the way for a moment. Terry Pegula making his first comments to the media here after being approved by the NFL team owners today to become the new owner of the Buffalo Bills. Short and sweet.
Yeah, short and sweet. Asked if he thought he got a deal in terms of this.
A hell of a deal.
He said he got a hell of a deal, calling it a significant step forward in owning the team. Has that small little transaction he has to take care of, the $1.4 billion. Finishing off in terms of finishing off the sales transaction expected tonight, tomorrow, leading into Friday, where we'll hear more about it. And
I wanted to ask him, but they wouldn't take. Only took one or two questions. He was very emotional when they announced that he bought the Buffalo Sabres. He started crying when he brought in some of the old players. Remember, I wanted to know if he was as emotional today when it comes to buying football.
We've seen the emotion a couple times, right? And it'll be interesting to see if that is the case on Friday. Saying this afternoon that his desire to purchase the Buffalo Bills has gone back perhaps longer than you think, leading back to when he took over the Buffalo Sabres, and that question was raised then. And now the owner of two teams, him and Kim owning the Sabres and the Bills here today. And I think a lot of people are going to remember, I got a hell of a deal here this afternoon for $1.4 billion, the highest sales price, the highest deal ever for an NFL franchise.
And right off the top, he asked us all how we were doing, and he said, I'm having a very good day.
Yeah, I would think he was. And, unanimous approval was expected here this morning. And there you go. They got it as anticipated. And, Mr. Pegula all smiles. A guy who has really embraced the Buffalo Sabres, embraced Western New York, and now obviously very anxious to embrace the Buffalo Bills.
Are there enough minutes in the day to take care of two professional sports franchises? They're going to rush back to Buffalo for the Sabres home opener on Thursday. What day is it today? It's Wednesday. That'd be tomorrow.
Yep.
And then, of course, they've got the huge game this weekend with the Patriots. They're going to be really on the go 24/7.
Yeah, I think it's a big week, obviously, for the Pegulas, and really historical landmark for the Buffalo Bills. When you think about today, go back to the Sabres, like you mentioned, news conference on Friday in terms of addressing the media back in Buffalo, and then all gearing up, as we mentioned, coming up for the Pegula family. Bills, Patriots may not get much bigger than that. I mean, it was a big game for the home opener this year, and all the emotion tied into that. I think that'll be an emotional game as well on Sunday.
All right, if you just joined us, to recap for you once again, Terry and Kim Pegula have been approved by the National Football League team owners at their annual meeting here at the Conrad Hotel in New York City to become the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. The closing of the deal, the paying of the actual money, $1.4 billion, expected to take about 24 to 48 hours. Mr. Pegula just addressed the media here, short and sweet, just made a couple of quick comments, took one or two quick questions, and is on his way. We expect he will continue, along with his wife, to take part of the meetings here, the NFL meetings, which will run throughout the day today, and then it's back to Buffalo to get ready for a new season for the Buffalo Sabres. That's it for right now. I'm Keith Rand. Radford, Jeff Russo. We're here live. We'll continue our coverage, of course, on Facebook, on Twitter, on our website at WKBW.com. And let's see, what time is it? We'll be live, I'm sure, for Eyewitness News, 7 Eyewitness News at noon today. Laura, can you hear us back there?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much, Keith and Jeff, for your live report. And meanwhile, back here, a lot of people have been tweeting their support and sending out statements of support, including U.S. Senator Charles Schumer. In his statement, which is a lengthy statement, he called them long-term owners fully committed to keeping the team here in Western New York, and saying that he believes that they are the right pair to carry on Ralph Wilson's legacy. He ended by saying he's looking forward to working with them for years to come. Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown also tweeting his support to the Pegula family today, and Ralph Wilson's family also issuing a statement of support. Now, Mr. Pegula was not taking any questions there. He did say he and his wife are very honored, and they are still waiting on all those financial details to be sorted out. They will be at the Sabres home opener tomorrow night, and they are very excited to speak out as owners of the Buffalo Bills. Now, Keith and Jeff are live in New York City, as you know. They'll continue to keep us updated and bring us live reports. We'll have much more coming up on 7 Eyewitness News at noon, and of course on social media and our website, WKBW.com. Good afternoon, I'm Laura Gray. We're following developing news on this historic day in Bills country. For the first time in franchise history, someone other than the Wilson family owns the Buffalo Bills. The Pegula family unanimously approved during this morning's NFL owners meeting in New York City. We brought you Terry Pegula's statement to the media live earlier, and now 7 Eyewitness Sports Director Jeff Russo and news anchor Keith Radford begin our live team coverage.
All right, thanks, Laura. What a day it's been, and the day is only half over. We're here live again, the Conrad Hotel. This is where the NFL team owners are meeting yesterday and today. Among the issues that they had to deal with, who's going to become the next owner of the Buffalo Bills? That all happened very quickly early this morning. Unanimous approval, no problem at all, as we all expected. The Pegulas' winning bid is good to go.
Yeah, historic day for the Buffalo Bills. Went down, as you mentioned, just as anticipated in terms of the unanimous approval. This was the scene here this morning. Terry and Kim Pegula arriving at the Conrad Hotel about 5 minutes before 8 o'clock, about a half hour before the owners were set to meet around 8:30. Actually held out of the beginning of the meeting as a presentation was done on their behalf. The Pegulas then entered the room, entered the owners' meetings just about 10 minutes after the owners' meeting started. And then after that, Keith, you heard a round of applause, rousing applause coming from the other owners. Unanimous approval. Just left now, closing on the $1.4 billion sale. That's expected to happen either tomorrow or leading into Friday. But this afternoon, right around 10:40, as we brought you live here earlier, Terry Pegula addressing the media after being approved for the very first time.
Kim and I are honored that the NFL owners have approved us as the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. And we'd like to thank the owners for their support. As we said, we're not going to take any questions today, but this is a significant step in us owning the team, but we still don't own it yet. There's a small matter of having to pay some money, and wires have to be sent from banks, and paperwork has to be signed and whatnot, but we'll get that done. We're going to head back to Buffalo tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll be at our Sabres home opener tomorrow evening, and we're guessing that Friday is probably we'll be able to speak to you all as the owners of the Bills. Okay? If you asked me 10 years ago if I was going to own the Sabres and the Bills, I would have called you a liar. I obviously, when I was asked when I bought the Sabres, are you interested in the Bills, you expect me to say yes. I can't, but it goes back further than you may imagine.
You think you got a good deal?
I got a hell of a deal.
Thanks, guys.
I own the team.
Morning session involving the NFL owners. They waited outside of the main meeting room while the vote took
Terry
place.
Pegula today asked, is it a dream come true? Yes, it is a hell of a deal. I own the team. As him and Kim now move forward as the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. Just that one small thing again, closing on the $1.4 billion deal. Then they will address the media back in Orchard Park on Friday, probably Friday afternoon.
He's a man of few words, but a very busy and happy man of few words today. I know that the Pegulas, again, are expected, as he mentioned, to head back to Buffalo probably later on tonight. They're going to fly back there in a private jet. Some of the PR people from the Bills and from the Sabres will be along with them. So that's happening. Also, that was one of the first items that was taken care of, probably the first item at the meeting this morning. A bunch of other things that the NFL has to deal with today. But also the former regime, members of Ralph Wilson's family and some of his top people here to officially hand over the team. Mr. Littman has been with Ralph Wilson for decades and decades. He's been handling all of his money. He's been his CFO for a long, long time. He spoke with us earlier today about the actual process of selling the team and where a lot of this money is going to go now into the Western New York and the Detroit communities, thanks to the Ralph Wilson Foundation.
Once all of that is complete, our focus for the interim time after that is going to be to do whatever we can do and whatever they'd like us to do to help ensure a very smooth transition for all of our people back at One Bills Drive and for all of our fans in Western New York. Once that's done, we will be turning our attention. We've, of course, done some pre-planning work, but we will be turning our attention to the future and the mission of the Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation, and we won't have anything further to say until we've done that and gotten on to that work. But we look forward to someday giving you a full report on what our intentions are and what our plans are going forward.
Mr. Littman and Ralph Wilson's niece both here. Mary Wilson did not come and attend this meeting. It was thought that she maybe would have been here, but she did not. This deal is supposed to close within 24 to 48 hours, and then really the Pegulas will be the official new owners of the Buffalo Bills.
And it's setting up, if all goes as planned, very much expected to, once this sale closes, expected to be really a coming out party this Sunday in terms of Bills ownership. Bills hosting the New England Patriots, the AFC East rivals at Ralph Wilson Stadium on Sunday, expected to be quite a scene down there.
When this first happened, when Mr. Wilson died last March, the speculation began right away. Who was going to buy the team? Where would it be? And how long would it take? A lot of people thought it would be much longer than this, maybe a year, 2 years before they settled everything, went through all the process. Here we are between 5 and 6 months later, and it is a done deal. The Buffalo Bills will have this new owner as soon as that money is paid. So onward and upward. Again, the Pegulas going back to take in the Sabres game tomorrow night. They'll be very busy with 2 professional sports franchises now in the Queen City.
Yes, they will, and we're going to be learning more as the day goes on here. NFL owners are about to break for lunch. We'll get their reaction to the Pegulas, unanimous support of them moving forward. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell expected to address the media on a number of topics here today in Manhattan. Also try to get his thoughts, obviously, on the Pegulas moving forward, taking the torch from Ralph Wilson Jr. and the Wilson family, moving ahead to a new era of ownership for the Buffalo Bills.
Also, the Pegulas' new hotel and ice rinks and the bar, and the hotel's not actually opening yet, but all the other things are opening up in the next few days. It is going to be a busy time in downtown Buffalo. We've got the Bills now playing in their season. Sabres about to begin the regular season. This big development starting to open up. Things are booming in the Queen City.
No question about it, and this really the final step of approval for the Pegulas. They'll move forward now in the transition to taking over the Bills and what that holds down the road.
All right, thanks, Jeff. For now, Jeff Russo, Keith Radford, we're live here in New York City. We'll have full coverage for you throughout the afternoon, and of course on all of our broadcasts at 5, 5:30, and 6 o'clock on 7 Eyewitness News. Also, follow our website at WKBW.com. We're tweeting and we're putting things on Facebook today. Have the full story for you live from New York. For now, that's it from here. Laura, back to you in Buffalo.
It's being called Pegula Day across Western New York tonight. The owners of the Buffalo Sabres now add the Bills to their holdings. Kim and Terry Pegula getting unanimous approval this morning by NFL owners to take over the football franchise, keeping it right here in Buffalo. My 7 Eyewitness News co-anchor Keith Radford and sports director Jeff Russo, both of them are in the Big Apple tonight, and they have all the events on this very big day for us.
All
Keith?
right, thanks very much, Joanna. The deal is done, almost. We'll explain as we continue our our team coverage on this story. We're live here at the hotel in Lower Manhattan where the NFL owners meeting continues. Started earlier today. We have some video for you. We've been here since early this morning, about 7 o'clock. The meeting actually convened at 7:30 as the owners came in. The Pegulas arrived just before 8 o'clock. Terry and Kim Pegula, along with various staff members from both the Buffalo Bills and from the Buffalo Sabres. They're involved as well, since Mr. Pegula owns the hockey club back home in the Queen City. Again, went into the meeting about 8:30. They kept the Pegulas out just for a little while. We heard several rounds of applause. We weren't allowed to be actually inside the meeting, but we could hear some of what was going on. Pegulas then brought in, and it was announced, yes, indeed, unanimous, all 32 teams represented, voting to allow the Wilson family to sell the Buffalo Bills to Terry Pegula and his wife. Now, Pegula came out about an hour and a half later. He was involved and is still involved in these meetings today. He finally came out and spoke with us. Didn't have too much to say, but he admitted, yes, there is still one more thing to do. Take a listen.
Kim and I are honored that the NFL owners have approved us as the new owners of the Buffalo Bills. And we'd like to thank the owners for their support. As we said, we're not going to take any questions today, but this is a significant step, and it's owning the team, but we still don't own it yet. There's a small matter of having to pay some money, and wires have to be sent from banks, and paperwork has to be signed and whatnot, but we'll get that done. We're going to head back to Buffalo tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll be at our Sabres home opener tomorrow evening, and we're guessing that Friday is probably when we'll be able to speak to you all as the owners of the Bills. Okay? If you asked me 10 years ago if I was going to own the Sabres and the Bills, I would have called you a liar. I obviously, when I was asked when I bought the Sabres, are you interested in the Bills, you expect me to say yes. I can't, but it goes back further than you may imagine.
You think you got a good deal?
I got a hell of a deal.
Thanks, guys.
I own the team.
Yes, he says he's a happy guy. Those meetings continue and the Pegulas are involved. They don't have a vote yet, though, because they have to actually write out that check and pay the cash. But they're here, actively involved, and they'll be here probably throughout tonight. And as he mentioned, possibly go back to Buffalo early in the morning.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's still that $1.4 billion deal to finalize before the Pegulas take over controlling ownership of the team. That is expected, though, to happen over the next couple of days. But in terms of having a voice as NFL owners, as you mentioned, they're participating in the meetings today, and the Pegulas are in. Bills President and CEO Russ Brandon has been a big part of the sales process, was with and represented the Pegulas here this morning at the NFL meetings, and knows the significance today of this transfer of ownership.
Oh, it's a historic day. It's one of the greatest days in Buffalo history, no question. You know, it's a cementing of Mr. Wilson's unbelievable legacy, and it's time to create a new legacy with the Pegula family and try to win some games on the field.
Today, a changing of the guard. Once approved, Terry and Kim Pegula really took the two seats for the Bills. Among NFL owners in the room, those longtime CFO Jeff Lippman and Vice President Mary Owen then left the room after being recognized for their years of service to the Bills. Really hard to miss today the booming applause as the Pegulas were formally approved this morning. The Pegulas needed only the backing of 3/4 of the 32 NFL owners. The vote, though, went as expected. Unanimous approval today. The Pegulas receiving the full backing of NFL ownership, and several of the owners that had a vote today quick to really publicly add their support. I caught up with a couple of well-recognized owners today, and the Cowboys' Jerry Jones and the Patriots' Robert Kraft both had plenty of nice things to say about the new owners now of the Buffalo Bills.
It's exciting. I know how committed they are to the Buffalo region and doing everything they can to make that franchise first class and treat the community the same way that Mr. Wilson did for 54 years.
I appreciate their commitment to Buffalo. I appreciate their commitment to a new stadium there, and really proud for Northern New York. They deserve that quality of commitment, and have, from all appearances, got a great new owner.
Obviously, Jones meant Western New York, but it's his statement about a new stadium and the Pegulas' commitment to a new facility that really caught the plenty of attention today. The Pegulas have not publicly touched on that topic, but this is not the first time that another NFL owner has pointed to the Pegulas' desire at a new facility. Russ Brandon said just about a half hour ago there was no new stadium talk today. Says that when the time is right, the Pegulas and the Bills will analyze the use of a new facility against renovating facility, have some time under the current Bills 10-year lease also, and the new stadium working group. But that will be among the big questions that the Pegulas are asked on Friday when they reconvene back in Buffalo. That's the first time that they will make many of their first extended public comments and answer some questions there on Friday down in Orchard Park.
Yeah, we waited here all afternoon for Russ Brandon. They finally brought him down only about 45 minutes ago. I thought he really had some good things to say. We'll have much more of his interview coming up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and of course tonight at 11 o'clock, and on our website at WKBW.com. But I thought it was interesting. You were there, and I asked him, was there any mention of Mr. Wilson today, since this is the first meeting that he's not here for? And he said, yes, absolutely. There were some wonderful things said about him today in that meeting, and several rounds of applause for Mr. Wilson and the staff of the Buffalo Bills, Mr. Lippman and Mary Wilson, and everyone who has been really running and connected to this franchise now for more than 50 years.
Yeah, significant on many levels. The transition of ownership, the changing of the guard from Ralph Wilson Jr., the founder, the owner, the only person that has owned the team really since over 50 years outside of the Wilson family. Now that changing hands to Terry and Kim Pegula, and that recognized here today, and really a significant day in franchise history, obviously.
A lot of reaction certainly here in New York at these NFL meetings, but as you might expect, a lot of reaction back home in Western New York as well.
Now on 7 Eyewitness News at 5:30, one of the biggest weeks in Buffalo Bills history, with the franchise now under new ownership. We are following developing news on this historic day. For the first time in franchise history, somebody other than the Wilson family owns the team. Terry and Kim Pegula getting the green light during this morning's NFL owners meeting in New York City. 7 Eyewitness Sports Director Jeff Russo and my co-anchor Keith Radford kicking off our live team coverage from the Big Apple tonight. Good evening.
All right, thanks, Joanna. An historic day, in the words of Russ Brandon, the president of the Buffalo Bills. Historic day for the city of Buffalo when the owners early this morning approved this deal. And then another good quote I thought today, Jeff, coming from Terry Pegula himself when he was asked, did he overpay? He said, I got a hell of a deal. I own the team.
Yeah, the events of today really several months in the making. When you talk about the sales process, Keith, went exactly like we had anticipated. The Pegulas arriving here earlier this morning, receiving unanimous approval from NFL owners very early in the league meetings, and addressing the media today. Terry Pegula with a big smile on his face. Obviously, no doubt he and Kim are very excited to start a new era for the Buffalo Bills, just wanting to finalize that deal. Expected to happen over the next couple of days to finish that thing off, Keith.
Now, we spoke with Mr. Pegula about 10:30, quarter to 11 this morning. He was very brief, only spoke for about 2 minutes, but there was one interesting thing he did have to say. Yes, all the steps have been taken now. Everything's been approved. There's only one more little detail to deal with.
This is a significant step in us owning the team, but we still don't own it yet. There's a small matter of having to pay some money, and wires have to be sent from banks, and paperwork has to be signed and whatnot, but we'll get that done. We're going to head back to Buffalo tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll be at our Sabres home opener tomorrow evening, and we're guessing that Friday is probably when we'll be able to speak to you all as the owners of the Bills.
As we understand it, it's going to take at least a day, maybe 2 days before everything is done, all the legal work is done, and then finally, after 6 months really since the passing of Mr. Wilson, the Pegulas will own the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, just waiting to close on that record $1.4 billion sale with the Wilson Trust, and you mentioned it, Bills CEO Russ Brandon called today really a historic day for the Buffalo Bills and in Buffalo history. The final step, what has been a long journey, not only for the Bills but also for Russ Brandon. Brandon has been the caretaker of this franchise both before before and after the passing of founding owner Ralph Wilson Jr. Now Brandon and the Bills look ahead to a new era. Brandon tells me the unanimous approval of the Pegulas really speaks volumes of how that family will stack up as NFL owners.
Well, I think, their commitment, what they've shown, that what they've done as the owner of the Sabres, their commitment to the region, the community, that means a lot in that room, Jeff. And, and also there was an applause for Jeff and Mary and the tremendous work that they've done for many, many years in that room as well. It's been a privilege to sit with them, and it's a privilege to now sit with the Pegulas.
Yeah, Brandon, talking about the changing of the guard. Once approved, Terry and Kim Pegula took 2 seats from the Bills inside the ownership meetings today. Bills' longtime CFO Jeff Littman, Vice President of Strategic Planning Mary Owen, then left the room today after being recognized for their years of service to the Buffalo Bills. And that's where things stand. The Pegulas looking forward to trying to close on that deal over the next day or so. They'll come back to Buffalo where they'll address the media, have a coming out party really this Sunday when it's all said and done. Buffalo Bills hosting the New England Patriots in what should be quite a scene back there in Orchard Park.
We always say any excuse for a party, but this really is a reason for a party for football fans in Western New York and for the Western New York economy as well. Just to bring you up to date, these NFL meetings, all the owners are here. They continue right now. They have a long agenda today. They just took a little bit of a break, actually. The Pegulas are here. They are taking part, even though they don't have an official vote yet. The Bills issue dealt with early this morning, one of the first things that they did, but there's another big issue the owners are dealing with right now, and that is the player behavior that has come to light over the recent weeks and months, sexual abuse and domestic abuse, and a major problem, a big story here. They're dealing with that. Roger Goodell is going to talk with the media sometime this evening. We don't know when, but I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that later. Keep it right here on 7 Eyewitness News. Also, our website, WKBW.com. We're on Facebook and Twitter as well. For now, Jeff Russo, Keith Radford. We'll be back at 6 o'clock. Let's send it back to you in the studio.